Why did I make two almost identical mallets? Stay tuned and you'll find out why. Hello, I'm Don. Welcome to WB Fine Woodworking. Today I'm going to share with you a video about making a mallet. James King over in King's Fine Woodworking decided to have a mallet challenge. He's probably known best for his Thor mallets that he makes. So when he had the challenge, I thought, well, that'd be a good opportunity to use my new lathe here. So I went ahead and decided to turn a mallet handle and make a mallet head. What you're going to find out is I made some mistakes the first time, and so I decided to make two. Since I'm making a dead blow mallet, I thought this information would help some of you understand what they are and why they're useful. I looked through the wood that I had on hand and came up with this scrap of curly maple and some curly myrtlewood. I checked to see if the combined thickness would make a good mallet head. After deciding on my stock, I started cutting it down to rough dimensions for the mallet. I needed pieces for the head and for the handle. You'll notice throughout the build that this Inco table saw sled comes in handy. This is the three parts for the handle. I glued up the handle with Titebond 3. This silicone mat that I have came in really handy, and I love using this silicone brush and the Rockler silicone tray. It makes cleanup very easy later on. After I applied the glue, I started putting on the clamps. Yes, I need to get some better clamps. These are some I got on a special deal many years ago. They work okay for things like this. The next day, I removed the clamps and looked at the handle. The next step is to cut the maple piece in the center so it's square instead of rectangular. This is where I really messed up on the first mallet that I made. I didn't make those cuts until after I had turned the handle. I had to make a sled for the handle to ride across the table of the bandsaw. When I got to the second cut is when I realized that I'd made a big mistake. My workpiece and the bandsaw blade were not at the same angle. Later on, I did clean it up with some chisel work. The solution was to make those cuts before I turned the piece. I trimmed down from the sides of the handle with my Japanese dovetail saw. And then took the piece over to the bandsaw to make the cuts that I needed. As shown here, the second side worked just fine. With those cuts made, I mounted the handle on the lathe and started turning. the handle turned, it's now time to turn attention to the head. I'm cutting the maple piece to close to final size. A Forstner bit is used to drill holes in the maple piece. These holes will hold BBs that will give the dead blow mallet its dead blow effect. The 2 holes are complete. Now this piece needs to be split in half. The markings will help at the table saw to get the angle correct. These have to be cut at an angle so that we can have a wedge in the top of the handle. To cut the piece and leave space for the wedge at the top, I set my Incra miter gauge at 2 degrees and made the cut. For the other side, I set my miter gauge at 2 degrees the opposite direction and made that cut. I now have the 2 pieces of maple that will go in this mallet center with a space at the top for a wedge that will be added in final assembly. Now it's time for the first glue up on the head. I have the handle clamped in place so I can get the right spacing on these 2 pieces. Getting these 2 pieces properly aligned is a critical part of the mallet build. You may have noticed that throughout this project, I mark everything carefully so that I don't make mistakes and that I get everything in the right place. Again, I'm using those cheap clamps that I have, but they do work well for this kind of glue up. With the 2 pieces of maple clamped in place, I removed the handle and started adding the rest of the clamps. The next day, after removing the clamps, I test fit the handle in the piece. I noticed some places where the handle was actually catching on the sides. I discovered it was some patches of glue, so I carefully pared those off with a chisel. There were spots of glue on both sides of the handle. Now the handle fit in the piece very tightly but smoothly. I did, however, notice some squeeze out of glue on the myrtlewood side, so I decided to pare that off as well. Now the head was ready for the BBs. I got these daisy BBs from my local Walmart. I used one of the plastic measuring cups that I use for finish to pour the BBs into the mallet head. You can see here why I have the fabric underneath it. I could just imagine having hundreds of BBs rolling around the floor in my shop. I gave the mallet head a shake just to make sure the BBs were loose inside. With the BBs ready to go, it's time to assemble the head. The next morning, I took off the clamps and looked over the mallet head to see what it looked like. Another successful glue up. Since according to my research, dead blow mallets are rated by their head weight, I decided to weigh the head of mine. The weight is 11 3/8 ounces. If you're wondering about this strange scale, it's what we use to weigh puppies when we have a litter. We put the puppies in the bowl. Oh, you want to see more cute puppies? How's this? Well, that's the end of part one. I decided to divide this up into two videos because it was getting a little too long. So check out part two.